Adlib is the DSP-agnostic buying platform to scale your programmatic campaigns smarter, faster, and more profitably. Adlib helps independent agencies and marketers deliver premium programmatic performance without the complexity, cost, or overhead of traditional DSPs. Their platform provides the tools, data, and automation to run enterprise-quality campaigns, from CTV and audio to geofencing and YouTube, all under one roof with zero trafficking headaches. Plus, they're not just a platform, they're your growth partner. The Adlib team helps you win new business, expand budgets, and deliver measurable ROI that keeps clients coming back. It's time to unlock programmatic. Join leading marketers worldwide who are using Adlib to deliver more campaigns with better results. Check out getadlib.com. Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm Zappa, joined by Franchi and fellow podcaster, co-founder of Signal and Noise, and partner at Credera, Omnicom's transformation consultancy, whatever that means. It's Rio Longacre.
Good to see you, Joe. Eric, been waiting for this. Looking forward to it.
We only invite other podcasters on the pod now.
That's how it works.
Miles Younger last week. If you don't have your own podcast, honestly, you're a nobody. Go home.
Don't bother.
We don't want to hear from you.
Yeah, well, so I tell people too, but it is funny. Like, I mean, it's kind of, there's like a decorum almost, like favor gets returned eventually. So you were on my podcast. Thank you. So I appreciate this.
Sure. We're all just doing handshakes beneath the table. Yeah, it's all dirty deals, which is also what Credera does at their transformation consultancy.
Dirty deals.
Right?
No dirty deals. Come on.
No,
people who don't work in consulting, I don't really understand. I get it. It's an industry, not very many people who haven't worked in it anyway, I really understand very much. I know a lot of people in ad tech, especially Ari, talks very disparagingly about consultants, so I'm happy to dispel any myths and set the record straight. Yes, we do sell
one consultant of a certain kind to another. I always say I've never had a real job, and I include consulting among that. So I think it's great.
My real job involves selling very expensive PowerPoints. That's what,
right.
That's what,
and that's a beautiful thing. I'm really glad that all of us can do that for several $100,000 a year, while all the nurses out there labor for like 80 grand. They love us. And that's why class relations are really good in this country.
That's why we're so popular. Yeah, that's for sure.
Anyway, what are you transforming?
But it's funny though, that expensive PowerPoints. I do joke because a lot of people say, oh, you're a consultant. What does that mean? Does that mean you're unemployed or you work from home? I was like, no, actually I am like a consultant, as in like management consulting, meaning you're advising
like a
management.
Proper consultant.
Right. Yeah. Correct. Right. So we're not just doing PowerPoint, just to be clear, but like many times the deliverables that we're packaging, which is a strategy, is more often than not, it's in a PowerPoint, but it can be in Excel, it can be in Keynote, it can be different types. And a lot of times the PowerPoint that we give them that also may have like architecture diagrams, recommendations, includes recommendations to actually build or execute something which we then, or someone else, but in theory, like the goal is for us to go in and continue doing that technology delivery afterwards. So it's not just the PowerPoints, but the PowerPoints very often is a means to an end.
Yeah, you actually do implementation.
Yep, we do.
By the way, I have a hot take to unveil on this, which is, so you'll see people who are like, I saw, like, there's like a viral tweet about this every 3 weeks where they're like, I saw a 24-year-old McKinsey consultant using AI to write a deck. Ergo, all of consulting is worthless. And I'm like, this is the stupidest effing take you could possibly have. Like the notion that you are using AI in any sort of creative or intellectual work, right? Whether it's what I'm doing for my clients or you're doing for yours in the consulting world, or what Eric's doing to like diligence a deal or whatever. Like the notion that you're using AI to pull in information and synthesize it and you're prompting and editing it, and that renders the work meaningless or devoid of value makes zero sense.
I totally agree. But what is interesting about that, though, I think it has exposed some truths about consulting, and it's actually forced consultants to change to a certain extent how we're selling and packaging and delivering work. And it has changed the industry, just like every industry has been changed, right? So I think it's looking into like, what does that mean? A lot of consulting, I mean, what are consultants selling? Like, you're going in, you're telling the client, okay, you compare a consultancy to an agency. Maybe we take a step back. Consultancy, like the pitch. What is the pitch? The pitch is you're basically telling the client, showing the client, we've done this before. We have a methodology, accelerators, other assets that we'll use to support us in delivery that we've spent years and years and thousands of hours thinking about and delivering again and again and again, that are very good, that you're not going to probably find elsewhere, at least not our versions. We have our own IP, right? We're going to use that, and we're going to have a team of experts that have done this before, have relevant experience. And here's some case studies of that are anonymized of where we've done it before. Now you should trust us and pay us money to actually give you this. And the deliverables that we'll give you will drive towards specific outcomes. We'll agree to deliverables, we'll agree to a time. So what's different than agency, you'll notice, is the pitch is not, here's what the new app we're going to build, new experience going to create. Now pay us to do that and pay us to buy me, or pay us, here's the new campaign for the spring. Give us media budget to actually execute on that. It's a step before that. Like we're actually trying to just explain to the client how they should trust us because we know how to deliver this and we can do it for them. So it's a very different mentality. In fact, I've hired a lot of agency people who have come to consulting. I find this really fascinating. I remember I hired this one woman who was a top account executive at an agency. And I remember we were on a pitch together. This is funny. And I gave her examples of case studies, all the stuff I just mentioned, a Gantt chart, like team structure, sample proposals even. I said, okay, well, I'm going to come back in a couple of days. We haven't storyboarded it. Now, please create the proposal. We'll review it next time I'm in the office in a couple of days. So I come back and I'm not kidding. She's in the room and she has like this whiteboard and she was like, is that a journey map? Like, what are you doing? I'm mapping the patient journey. It was for a healthcare. It was for a provider, right? For a health system. And I'm mapping it. I said, no, like we're trying to convince them that we can map the patient journey. We'll map the patient journey using qualitative research, quantitative research. We'll go in the hospitals. We'll talk to people. We'll do data analysis. We need to prove to them we can map the patient journey with a rigorous methodology we've done before with statistically significant samples, sample size.
Rio, I think you're highlighting something else we've been talking about on the pod, right, Eric? What we were talking about last week with Miles Younger, which is my guess is at Omnicom, you guys are selling to pretty big clients, right? Like large companies, enterprise sales.
It usually is. That's one thing. By the way, I've been in Omnicom about a year. So I've been in management. So I actually started an agency many years ago. I was a media planner, buyer, a bunch of smaller shops, and then ended up going to Capgemini when they were looking to build out what was really became their customer experience team, was their marketing sales service team. This is before CX was even a thing. And then what's great about Omnicom is we have access, like one of the, I can explain why I came here, but like one of the reasons I came here was access these incredible brands. So yeah, we're doing like we have access we're working for the head of media, for the CMO, these incredible global brands. That's been really nice.
Right. And so the reason I highlight that is because last week we had Miles Younger on and we were talking about enterprise sales. And what he was saying is like, look, with enterprise sales, what you're really doing is you're trying to convince someone who is usually pretty risk averse, right? And like has money to spend and needs someone they can trust. We've done this 100 times. We know exactly how to do it. We've done it for credible, like other clients whom you may view as your peers, right? And that is what you're sort of describing, is this mentality of not like, we're going to just rush off and go execute, right? Or we have some brilliant new idea or whatever, but actually just making the client comfortable enough to sign off by showing them, we've done this a million times before and we can map it out and yada, yada.
Yeah. What you described as a consultative like sales approach that you really have to take in consulting if you want to sell this type of work. So yeah, for sure. And what I thought was interesting about this opportunity, like, Credera is about a 4,000, 4,500 person firm. I'm a firm believer that like in order to deliver a lot of the ad tech and advertising and experiential work that agencies are doing now, you really need to be strong in tech. So when my previous role, I was with a systems integrator that did not have a media arm. And I built that MarTech practice initially, which is part of CX. And then we started getting pulled into ad tech more and more. And I used to work in media, so I understood what DSPs were and SSPs. And I understood what header bidding was and all the things that were coming up in these ad tech conversations and data clean rooms, right? But then when we started getting pulled in, we would run into the agency of record of media. And if there's no way they were going to let us build technology as a potential, even though we weren't buying media, they still saw us as a competitor, right? So we'd run into that. And if we delivered something for them, it's not going to get used. So I realized, wow, it actually makes more sense to do this in a holdco or in a big agency where we can partner with the media teams and we can help them, we can deliver things together. And then not only can we deliver them together, but after they're delivered, we can work with the media teams and the marketing team and the media teams. Okay, what budget is going to go towards this solution so we can actually test it out and see the efficacy, see how this boosts ROAS or does whatever your other outcomes that you're trying to achieve.
So is one way you put it, you're bringing ad martech, like developing the ad martech stack and media execution together?
Yeah, bringing that together. I mean, it's not like we're the first ones to do this. I mean, Publicis did it with Sapient, right? They did that. Epsilon has some advisory. And so we weren't the first ones, but I really think this is going to be the winning. I mean, there's more pieces in the model than just this, but I think like this plus media execution was going to be a part of the winning model, if that makes sense.
How is AI changing what you do?
It's changed it a lot. I mean, just looking at like, how do we deliver work, Eric? It's changed it meaningfully already. We're using AI all the time. I even tell people in our teams, like, you should be using this for everything. We have our own AI. So like it's not like we're putting anything confidential out into like public. the main LLMs. We have our own versions that we use here, where they're containerized. So we're using it for almost everything. We use it for obviously things like taking notes, synthesizing notes, writing follow-ups. If we need help thinking through, like, what does this all mean? It'll summarize things. We use it for, it supports almost everything. It hasn't changed the process or how we deliver our work, but it's sped it up significantly. Things that would take weeks, we can now do in a couple of days. And it's also changed the way a lot of times we even have to package and sell the work, Eric, too, which is interesting. So like before, a lot of consulting work was delivered time and material, right? Where you say, okay, it's going to say, here's the team, here are the rates for them. Obviously, we have our margin built into that. The client doesn't see the margin necessarily, but they can see what the rates are. They know they're paying that. And everyone clocks their hours. And you like the old consulting models, you just build based on that. Like you send them like every week, you send them a burn down report of how many hours have been clocked. But that's completely changing. So now it's, okay, well, should we even be billing you for some things? We probably shouldn't be, right? So like, I don't want to bill you an hour, I'll give you an example. Like when you build out a team structure, old school consulting, you'd always have a couple business analysts. These were the junior people. That's how I started out, right? You'd be what does the business analyst do? If you're not talking, you're taking notes. And because you're junior, you're not talking. So you're basically taking notes, facilitating.
You're synthesizing.
You're synthesizing stuff. You're there. You're like, I mean, you're doing work, but you don't have the knowledge to actually bring to bear that the partners, the more senior people have. So you're mostly just listening, taking notes, facilitating workshops. You're doing delivery and you're billing for it, but your rate's a lot lower. But you look at the consulting model, it used to be a lot of junior people who are billing at 100% and senior people who are billing much less than 100% at a much lower margin. So the way you take your margins is by having a pyramid structure, both in your projects as well in your consulting practices. I think what's happened is really interesting this last 2 or 3 years is like, you can't justify bringing 2 or 3 BAs because like honestly, AI is much better at taking notes, doing a lot of things I just described. AI is much better. So you can't necessarily bill for that. So I just tell clients, let's just agree to an outcome about what you need us to deliver. Let's agree to a time frame and we'll put the right team together. And like you tell us what it's worth for you to do this and we'll put the right team together and then we'll just work together and deliver it for you in the time frame you want.
For me, that's generally a better way to sell anyway. I've always tried to do that. Even back when I was a writing freelancer, I would try to sell like outcome or deliverable and not sell time, right? Because when I started freelancing as a writer, like I could do stuff. I'm a fast writer. I'm not necessarily better than my peers, but I am faster. And so I could do in an hour what they could do in 5 hours. I was like, why the hell would I charge 20% of what they could do? I'm getting you the work faster and it's of the same or better quality, right? So charging per deliverable or per outcome, I think is generally better. The only amendment I would have to what you said, Rio, because it's very relevant to my line of work as well in marketing consulting, is that I think that because AI is so good at getting the notes and synthesizing, it makes the work we do better. And I think that's really important to articulate because to me, it's not just that it's faster, it's that AI has greater capacity than any human could have. We have the creativity. And so that's what you do is you pair human creativity with machine capacity. And you are able, especially in the consulting business, to bring in a level of detail regarding the client's expertise, product, and voice that you cannot imitate if you were working just from a human brain. So I actually believe as consultants, we should be very honest about the fact that we're using AI because I think it's making us faster and it's making us do better work for our clients than we would have done otherwise. The other thing I will say, point B, is that I think the BAs, the 23-year-olds who are smart but they don't have a lot of business experience, they're still really relevant. To me, it allows them to perform at a much higher level than they would have historically because AI gives them context and guardrails, right?
Yes,
like in the past, we had that and they didn't.
I'm going to push back on that a little, Joe. Like the reason why is that, it makes them better at certain things and they have access to much more information, 100%, right? That they wouldn't, the AI gives you access to like this vast knowledge that in the training run that the large language model scoops up and uses to train itself. So all of that's there, that knowledge, you can access it. But I've noticed when we give the same AI tools, the same large language models, the same chat interfaces to junior people, they're not getting the same outcomes. And this is how it's changed the consulting model significantly. And consulting is going from a pyramid model to an obelisk model, where you have some junior people, but you probably have... I don't know what
the hell an obelisk is. I'm going to be honest.
It's like a tower, right?
Do you know what an obelisk is, Eric? I have no idea.
Oh, a word that Joe doesn't know. Okay.
Joe knows what an obelisk is.
Thank you, Rio.
No idea. I don't know. Wait, so it's a towel?
Neither do I, by the way.
It's going in the show notes. All right. So it's really a tower, basically, right? It's shaped.
A tower. Okay.
It's kind of how it's shaped. It's shaped more like like a fat pencil, right? Where it's like, you know,
I see. Okay, interesting.
Right. So like the Washington Monument, right, or something like that, where it's like,
right.
But
That's
it's,
what
but
I
it's,
thought of,
but you notice instead of a pyramid, it's like the same up and down, right? So you have almost the same number of junior people as senior people in an obelisk because you're not able to have all those junior people billing, right? You're not able to.
Personally, I'd never get caught with a pyramid. I've always been an obelisk man. I've always said that.
I think I have a hot take that I've yet to unleash on the world. But I've been thinking about this and this conversation synthesized it, which is like sometimes people, and I'm sure, Joe and every you get this as well as, kind of like being early adopters of this stuff. Sometimes people challenge me like, how are you able to like do 2 podcasts and like run a fund and be on a board, like, and to me, that is a total proxy for if this person uses AI or not. Full stop. It is. Like anytime anybody challenges me on like output, I'm like, bro, like, have you heard of Claude?
You couldn't have done the output you have today, Eric. You could not have done this 5 years ago, probably. I'm guessing, right? There's no way I could have done this. I think even the pod, I just do that in the side, right? It's like nights and weekends. I mean, just doing that, the time it takes to research guests, so we send out a detailed discussion guide, all of the follow up. I mean, it's all AI powered and AI driven. It's incredible.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have another note on this, which is I understand some publications, some advertising and marketing trade publications are rejecting any piece that they detect has been written with the use of AI. I think this is so freaking stupid. Like, I understand it, and it's always been the prerogative of trade publications to set their own guidelines. And so those are their submission guidelines. Obviously, any PR firm that's going to submit pieces to them will adhere by it. And that's, as I said, that's your right. But I think it is Luddism, and the days of this perspective
Luddism
are
or Luddentism? What is it? Which one is it?
Luddism, and I know that because I looked it up before this because I was writing something about it.
I've never heard Luddite used in that manner, so that's good. I like that. I'm going to steal that show.
Welcome to Open Market, Rio.
These are my takes that I get off is obscure terminology. No, but okay. So the reason AI is really good at business writing is because business writing is highly formulaic. That's the truth. It always has been. Before I was using AI to write client deliverables, I wrote them by hand, right?
Yeah.
I started doing this, 5+ years ago. And so before, like whenever it was 2024, 2025, when the LLM started getting really good, we didn't have LLMs at all. And then even in the beginning, when they were publicly released, they weren't very good. So I used to write everything by hand. And the reason I could do it really fast was because it was formulaic, right? It's like a high school essay. It's like you got your intro, you got your 3 body sections, you're going to have your thesis that ladders down to those 3 body sections.
You kind of know the skeleton and you're just filling in the bones and you're thinking and you're trying to write as quickly as you can think, which can be challenging too, right?
And that is why AI is useful for business writing, is because it's highly schematic. And so essentially what happens now, like when someone like me uses AI to, let's say, write like an 800-word essay for an Adtech CEO, I'm going to come up with the argument by myself, right? I usually come up with the headline, I come up with the thesis, and then I'll write, here are the 3 body sections, and I'll write like 1 or 2 notes, like here's sort of where we want to go with this. And then using a client call transcript where I've discussed this matter with the client to get their expertise and their voice, I can essentially use AI, again, human creativity to come up with the argument, AI capacity to fill in the details. I can use AI to populate that structure, and then I get a byline. So in the past, that would take an average writer, my understanding was 4 or 5 hours. It would take me, as someone who just happens to be very fast, like an hour. And now with AI, it takes 10 minutes.
It's funny. So I have a similar story to that, Joe. So as you know, I write a lot, right? I actually used to be a journalist way back in the day. That's a fact. Some people know about me, but I mean, I did that for a few years when I was around the same time I was trying to become a diplomat, either one of which turned into a career, but I ended up getting it into advertising media, right? Kind of as a result of that. That's maybe a story for another day, but so I'm a very fast writer. I've been published a lot over the years. I like writing. I can write, I think, quicker than 95% of people out there, right? Probably similarly to you, Joe.
And I can see that in the amount you produce, by the way. Like, you have a love of the game and you love to like sound off on what's going on. And usually people who do that and who do it well are fast writers, because otherwise they would just never produce the volume they do.
Totally. Continue. But with AI, it's much faster. So I just wrote that article. I don't know if you read it. It was about the death of the MarTech stack, right? And that did pretty well. I mean, I have 2 points, right? Point number one is like, I wrote that in about an hour, right? And granted, I dumped in a bunch of stuff I'd written before. I dumped in like 10 articles I really liked by people like Scott Brinker and other people I really respect. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. And I call that in the prompt, here's something I like in this article. I want to incorporate that and potentially quote it. And then it's funny. I just sit there, I'll turn on record and I'll dictate what I'm thinking for the article. Sometimes I'll talk for 10 minutes and then that plus all the stuff I drop in there, give me an outline. Give me the outline. Okay, so work in paragraph 1. I can rip through that in like an hour, maybe 2. And then I have to edit it obviously very carefully. So it takes a lot of like craft and skill still goes into it. But that would have taken me probably a week of like an hour here, hour there, at least a week of like overall time, maybe 5 or 6 hours of writing time and research time to do it. And now it's done an hour or 2. It's incredible. And the quality, to your point earlier, Joe, I think the quality is great of what I'm producing now.
This episode of Open Market is sponsored by Sharp Pen Media. I've spent my career building and investing in ad tech, and one thing I've learned, great products aren't enough. Distribution is everything. That means meeting customers where they are with messaging that stands out. Sharp Pen does exactly that for ad tech leaders like Viant, TV Scientific, and many others. And full disclosure, Joe is the CEO of Sharp Pen Media, and I advise them, so you get to work with us. How cool is that? Visit sharppenmedia.com to learn more.
Like, I want to address some of the criticism of this point of view. Like, there is a notion that, as we were talking about charging for outcome, right? Not time. There's a notion that, oh, well, because it's faster, it should be cheaper. I completely disagree. The value is in the quality of the work and its impact, right?
It's Luddism to say that, Joe. It totally is. But think about it. Typing's faster than like handwriting. So like when word processors came out, like I'm sure there were purists like, oh, you can't do that. It's not really respecting the craft. I'm sure people were saying that, right? But the fact is, everyone does it that way now because it's faster and it's easier and it's better.
It has always been thus. It is the same as saying your accountant's work is less valuable because they have calculators. Like, or they have, Excel models. Like,
it's a good analogy. I like that.
What's value? Yeah, it is pure Luddism. Exactly. It's a like ideological objection to technology itself because it's viewed as threatening to the human's career. It is not about the quality or the value of the work. So to me, the work is just as valuable. And again, something I want to emphasize is I think the work is better because it can pull in a degree of detail about what the client thinks. That makes the work I now produce on behalf of my clients sound and reflect much more of their own thinking and their product and their expertise than just mine, which in the olden days, when it would just go through the Joe filter, they were getting a lot of Joe. And some clients might like that, but others might say, oh, what happened to me? Like this went through Joe's brain and my brain got lost, right? And obviously part of the work of ghostwriters has always been to capture that. But frankly, it used to be much harder. And now you can use the client's actual words to populate that outline that I might devise. So I do not think publications should be rejecting pieces because they were written with AI. I do not think a consulting firm's clients should be pissed off that the consultants are using AI. I think it comes back to, is the work of quality? Is there clear thinking there?
Has the consulting firm vetted the work, reviewed it? Because everything needs to be reviewed, especially very carefully. But in the trade pub thing, though, it's interesting. So I've written in trade pubs like off and on over the years, for about 20, 25 years, right? So part of the reason why, so the Signal Noise, which is the podcast, the part of the reason, so we were always going to do a podcast because with Brett House, where we go back 30, actually we met right after college, right? So we go back like 30 years, right? So we wanted to do a podcast, but the reason why we created the content business is we were getting like, I don't know if frustrated is the right word, but the trade pubs, I mean, look, they serve a purpose. I'm not going to say they don't, and they put out some good content, but like, I'm generally not super happy with the editorial process. It can only be 800 words. It takes several weeks. Stuff needs to be published immediately. Like when something's timely, you need to put it out. And what's great about podcasting, publishing, new blogging software with AI, you can own your own distribution. It's incredible. You can own the distribution. You can own your readership. You don't have to rely on a trade pub and outsource it to them and be beholden to them. So it takes work, it takes effort, and it doesn't happen overnight. You have to continually push out content. But if you do that over time, you build up a subscriber base, you get, and you have social platforms to push stuff out. So that was the thinking there was, I don't want to this. And I think the trade pubs, they serve a purpose, but an increasingly less important one, I would argue. So I think the ability to self-publish is incredible. And I agree, they should probably catch up with the times because I think they'll be in trouble.
It all goes back to executive evangelism. Be your own evangelist, go directly to your audience, have a newsletter, have a podcast, write on social, because yes, it is ridiculous that as the CEO of a company or the partner at a consulting firm or a venture firm, you should be spending 3 times as long to do the same work with the same quality of thinking just because a journalist doesn't like the fact that you used AI to write it.
Yep. Makes sense. Yeah. You should. And you shouldn't, you as a CEO or as a leader, you can do it. Everyone has access to the same social tools. Everyone has access to the same AI and large language models and other AI tools to help to support you. It's incredible, the democratization of the content production and dissemination right now. So like everyone has this at their fingertips. There's no reason not to do it.
And if you can't do it for yourself, hire me to do it. Hey,
hire someone to do it.
So you are very interesting in that regard. And this is part of why we had you on, is because you are a great evangelist for yourself and your ideas and for the firm you work for. And so I'm curious how you view that in the agency context. Like, obviously, as with anyone who does a ton of evangelism, this is something you love to do, right? I bet, like, we had Miles from U of Digital on. He was saying, this is the thing I would do if I didn't get paid. And I'm the same way. Like, I've always written stuff I would, even if I weren't getting paid to do it. I just love to sound off and subject other people to my opinions. But talk about how you view the value of that work for a holdco and like whether holdcos should be doing more of this.
You're correct. I would be doing it regardless, right? I like doing it. I have fun doing it. I want to get my voice out there, and it helps me think through things as I research them so I get a better understanding of them. And it actually makes me a better consultant and better trusted advisor for my clients going through that. But how does it help a holdco? How does it help a consulting company? I think it helps them in a meaningful way. And what I mean by that is one-way consulting is changing. It used to be like, why would a brand work with a McKinsey? Because McKinsey has that trust. And they know, hire McKinsey, and they can put anyone from McKinsey on and they have a process for doing this. They have a recommended team structure. They have accelerators. They have smart people. They can throw it in, and anyone in McKinsey, in theory, can deliver this strategy deck for me. I think what's changing is clients that Mimi talked about, that the guy sees the consultant in an airplane researching stuff. And that's actually not incorrect. Like we would joke in consulting, you first week on the project, you're learning about the subject because you may have never worked in industry before. You may know nothing about this type of business. You're researching on the plane, right? So we joke about that. But you don't want junior people who don't know what they're talking about. They want senior people who've done this before, who've worked in industry, like increasingly. And like, they don't only want those people selling to them. They don't want like the pitch team and then like the delivery team, like the C team. They want everyone involved because they want trusted advisors they can work with. And that's what big consulting firms have always been good at this, like McKinsey, BCG, Bain. They've always kind of done that anyway. I think generally across the industry, and I think in agency land, this is happening too, that clients are expecting trusted advisors who know their stuff, who have done similar work with different clients and can really bring those years or decades of learning in. I think that's increasingly important. So I think it's changing. As the industry changes, team structure changes, the tools we have changes. I mean, it's really changing everything. Part of that, I guess, to bring this full circle, is being able to point to content and give it to clients and say, "I'm an expert. Here's proof." And it's funny when I joined Omnicom, you have to declare any IP you have. And I actually said I had this podcast and this blog, and they reviewed it. They said, "Well, why should we allow you to keep doing this? We don't. Anything you produce in theory and in an employment agreement is owned by the company." They were great. They said, "Okay, well, you need to show that this is actually helping drive value for clients," right? And it's funny, like really early on, we had a pitch with a client, and there's a bunch of articles that I wrote on CDPs, customer data platforms. So we actually sent a couple of those. We combined them into a white paper, sent them to a client, and sent a podcast episode with one of the CEOs. And the client came back and said, "This is great. I need help thinking through this. Yeah, I need you to help." And then we ended up getting a work order for I think it was a 2 or 3 month project right away with a big team. Help think through a really thorny question about customer data. Do they need a CDP? Was the one, what is the role of identity? So all these questions that came out in the article that made the client think, and like, there's no way we would have won that work if we hadn't had that. So again, the good consulting firms, I think, always have kind of sold based on points of views, but increasingly it's becoming like a requirement for all consultants to do this, in my opinion.
I think in business, media, politics, culture, I'll just go quickly, Eric, the brands are becoming less important, and individuals and their expertise and their voices are becoming more important, right? And that's, to me, what you just said illustrates that, Rio, is that, of course, like Omnicom, for example, is a great brand, right? And that's going to remain, and that's going to be really important. But the individuals who compose Omnicom, you guys are also all individually more important than you used to be because you're visible, And in the olden days, that wasn't the case, right? Like individual partners you wouldn't be seeing them every day sounding off on LinkedIn. So you would have to say, I trust the brand. But now you can look at the partner at Omnicom versus the partner at WPP versus the partner at McKinsey or whatever. And you can say, who do I want to work with? And that's based on their expertise and the content they're putting out there. So it makes perfect sense.
And I think generally in the industry, it's not been an industry where people have felt that they can do that. And by industry, I mean just agency business in general. I think employees have not felt empowered. Even the leadership, they've historically been very quiet. Stuff goes out in press releases and investor briefs and stuff like that. But it's starting to change. I mean, WPP is a competitor, but I mean, Lauren Wetzel, look what she does. I mean, she's a master of pushing out great content. Some of it thought provoking. Sometimes it can be almost like she attacks a little bit, but I mean, she's got strong game. So I admire that. Right. So I think I think that's changing. There's an understanding that like not only just ad tech, and you've done a great job evangelizing in ad tech, how like this executive led communication. I think it's starting to happen more everywhere. That not just the CEO, but senior people in your organization should have distinct points of views. And they should be speaking directly to public, frankly, because they can.
How long have you been working at Omnicom now?
It's been about a year. I started last August.
Yeah. How did that all come together?
So actually, it's funny. My old job where I worked at a company called Slalom Consulting, like several agencies were actually my clients, right? It's funny. So I had two of the biggest indie agencies were clients, and then one of the big holdcos was a client where we were building everything from audience platforms, doing clean room work. We were really like helping them with technology delivery, right? And one thing that systems integrators and consultants are really good at, Eric, is like not our knowledge of technology and our relationships. I think this is more important. Our relationships with technology companies and hyperscalers that are really, really deep, right? So with AWS, like we were the number one partner with like my old firm. We were like first in the Amazon Partner Network. I've worked with them since like 2010, 2011, right when cloud was starting, right? So I've done hundreds of projects that had a cloud component to me. I'm not a cloud engineer, but I know like if I need to staff, I know which skills I need to bring on board stuff. So we had done a lot of work with Amazon, with Google, and I had contacts there. So because of that, I worked with several agencies before. I've kind of been in the business peripherally for a long time, right? Again, I started in media, so I had a lot of contacts, but then within MarTech and AdTech, within a lot of the work we were doing, the agencies would be there. And then increasingly agencies were starting to become our clients as we're either building stuff for them or working together with them to deliver things for clients. So we're doing more and more of that over the last, I guess, 4 or 5 years. That started really picking up. Like we were initially doing more MarTech work. It was like heavy CDP, CMS, integration work for clients. It came out of customer experience, but then increasingly it started bleeding into advertising. Okay, wait, so you have a CDP. Let's connect this to a clean room. Let's connect this, figure out how these audiences can be pushed to DSPs for activation. Like what are we going to do with measurement? Where's ID Res going to sit? Is it going to be a third-party service? Is it going to be here? Is it a deterministic or probabilistic model? These are all things that we started working through, and we started bleeding into ad tech more and more. So through that, we started working with agencies. And another thing that's important to point out too is a lot of the work that's done with the technology partners is actually funded, at least partially, by the tech companies, right? So let's say you're building something on AWS or on Azure or GCP, right? You'll sit down with them, with the hyperscaler, and say, okay, well, how much is this going to generate in ARR for you in year 1, year 2, year 3? And once a client has data or applications running in a cloud environment, for the hyperscaler, they make money, and it's just like a cash register that keeps ringing every year, right? So they know that based on how much money that's going to generate, how much money they're willing to pay for this. So a lot of the work that SIs do is actually funded by the hyperscalers, and these the initial assessments, the initial projects. So a lot of the work I was doing with the agencies was actually a result of that, and a result of relationships with AWS and Google were the main ones.
Anything surprise you about working at a holdco?
Well, like I said earlier, like the brand access is amazing. All the biggest brands, so that's great. I mean, and in the media, it's everyone warns you all holdcos is going to be so much politics. It's going to be, but people have been great. Like the media teams are happy to bring us in. I'm not saying there's never any friction, but there's really not much. I mean, the media teams are great. They've been super open working together. And look, we acquired IPG officially, so I still think we're still kind of working through like the ways of working with some of those teams in Axiom. And maybe it's because I have a media background, Eric, that it's been easier for me to actually sit and talk with the media teams and media professionals. And I think also they realize they need a transformation consultancy, Joe. They need, they can actually help clients think through these tech questions. Because, they're great at media, right? So I think there's recognition that they need to bring these skills. And they'd rather bring us in than have like Sapient come in or Accenture come in or someone else, right?
Rio, you're a great provocateur, provider of takes. You provided us with some before the call started, so I want to sort of throw them at you and we can hit them. So you wrote that there's a revenge of the services moment happening right now where people thought software is going to automate out services. And actually now with AI, it looks like the power balance might be shifting. Why do you think that?
Well, AI is driving down the cost of software and content to close to zero, right? Not zero, but close to zero. I mean, you certainly creative. You can create stuff almost for free, right? With just a very minimal subscription. Again, everyone has access to. So I think because of that, it's becoming more important to actually be able to deploy services, number one. But I think number two, AI companies are realizing you can't deliver AI without a services wrapper around it in order to actually build something that includes AI as like on top of AI in order to actually do things that have any meaningful value for the business. You can't just give people the license and say, go use it. It'll work. Software has never worked that way. AI is no exception. So there's a realization that you look, who was the first one to figure this out? Palantir. Like, what's their whole model? They have, they're obviously building things with AI, but how are they doing it? Forward deployed engineers. What's a forward deployed engineer? It's a consultant. It's the same model. There's no difference, right? So why did OpenAI just create a services arm? Why is Anthropic hiring like crazy? I know 4 or 5 people I used to work with just joined. Either the students, they're building up big services orgs. Now, there'll be lower margins than you would see in the SaaS business, but get Wes, this is not SaaS business. AI is much lower margins than SaaS. It's bigger, right? But SaaS business at 80, 90% margins because of the cost of training, like the GPUs and data centers, electricity costs for training, as well as for actually inference to actually train the next miles and run the business is very cost prohibitive. So the margins are significantly lower in AI. So if you're bringing in people, so that's why SaaS companies would get, the street would kill them, right? So let's say your Salesforce, right? If you ever had more than 10% of your revenue come through services, your stock would just get hammered because, services have 20% margin, 25% margin, right? At most, when you look at EBITDA at the end of the day, like they would get hammered because SaaS has like 90%. And that's just built. It's like, it doesn't cost a lot but like AI is different. So I think AI services are a natural fit for that. You need them, but also the margin's it's not going to have an incredibly negative effect in our bottom line. In fact, it'll add top line revenue and give them revenue at good margin relative to what they're seeing in the rest of the business.
Yeah, hard agree with this whole thing, by the way. Sequoia wrote that memo a couple months ago. I forget, paraphrasing, basically like the next $1 trillion company is a services company. And our latest investment at Aperium on the surface looks like a services company. And the reason why, and it hasn't been announced yet, so I can't name them, is effectively like what they've built is with AI, using AI, is so freaking crazy that they need to put a forward deploy engineer like in clients for clients to actually like get on board it and use this thing. And it looks like a services business, but I think it's going to be a massively scalable AI business at the end. So super agree with you on this one, Rio. What else?
Well,
What you got, Joe?
Adam Epstein also, when he came on, he was talking about
Good
how
example.
to sell agents. Yeah. And he was talking about how to sell agents. And he was saying, you cannot sell agents like SaaS. Like you can't expect that people are just going to learn how to use it. Like expect that it will be very difficult and you're going to kind of have to get in there and show the client how to make the most of it, which is exactly what you said, Rio, about Palantir and the forward deployed engineers. So relatedly, maybe you've written about, as you mentioned, the death of the MarTech stack. Tell us about that thesis.
That article did well because it was a little alarmist maybe and then purposefully hyperbolic, but I think foundationally it's true. So the thesis of that was, for those who didn't read it, is that because AI is going to allow agents to work across tools and people will be talking to the agents, they won't be sitting in dashboards anymore. So you think about like, what is SaaS? SaaS is really a databases, workflows, permissions with a UX, a UI, right? User interface. That's the SaaS business. And like, these UIs are so complex because they're built for millions of people, right? For millions of users, right? So the complex, they're so feature rich and it takes months of training, like to go into a DSP or to go into a CRM or to go into any of these platforms. There's knobs and controls and this and that. Like their whole conference is dedicated to teaching people like how to do this or power, like hundreds of like the fact that you can be a power user or something is crazy to me, right? Because the software, what this shows is the software is difficult to use, not very intuitive. The AI is changing that. That was the thesis, is that because agents will be running on these, everything is going to have to become headless, meaning there'll be no UI because the agent will be interfacing directly through like API or MCP server directly with the databases and all the information in the SaaS tool. And Salesforce just went headless, right? So the death of SaaS, the thesis is that probably swarms of agents, right? Or teams of agents. They'll be sending these agents out to do certain things. The agents will be skipping across platform. Agents don't care if they're in the CRM or the ESP or the and you can list out all these acronyms, or the DMP or the DSP or the S. Like, they don't care. They're just going to go across, do what they need to do, get the information they need in order to accomplish the task that you're asking them to do. So because of that, the UI dies. And because of that, the business model of SaaS starts to crumble because you can't sell seat licenses anymore.
Yeah, and it's similar to what you guys at Aperium have been writing about in regards to the potential emergence of like an integrated media platform, right? Like one platform that sits across all this stuff and helps you navigate it. I feel this now as I use software. Like whenever I use something and it can't just like do what I want, I'm like, why can't I just tell it what I want and then it does it, right? Like the LLMs have like broken all of our brains as it relates to SaaS. SaaS now seems as ridiculous as like 15 years ago it would have seemed when SaaS became a thing, to be like, someone's got to come and install this shit on your computer. You're like, what the hell are you talking about? So yeah, it's a giant leap forward.
Now, I'm not saying SaaS companies will die. They won't, right? I mean, like, just because you can create a CRM for yourself, I mean, but even think about it, the concept of software is changing. You can create a CRM. It won't be a great CRM, and it won't maybe have all the security things or features you'll need to deploy in an enterprise. Probably not at all. But if you need a CRM for something specific, you can create it immediately and deprecate it immediately. So like software now becomes like low cost, sometimes almost no cost, and ephemeral, which is kind of crazy. So, but SaaS will continue, I guess it was my point. But like the business model of selling seat licenses and have 80,000 people to support I think Salesforce, 80,000 people, that whole business model gets challenged and they end up being smaller companies with headless solutions in the future, is my opinion.
Yeah. Some of the most interesting things going on right now are, people are looking to do roll-ups of SaaS businesses for exactly that reason. To put them together, rip out costs, make them headless, and that's the next generation of SaaS. That's something to keep an eye on.
Relatedly, Rio, you wanted to talk about agentic media buying. So I think what you essentially see with agentic media buying is Adtech CEOs seeing the same landscape we were just describing, right? And they're thinking, I want to build the one sort of agent to rule them all, right? Like I know that media buyers are not going to be sort of navigating between like 5 different DSPs or SSPs, trying to figure this out. So they're probably going to have one agent they talk to, and it's going to go across all these different platforms. And I would love to be the one who creates that agent. You see PubMatic, for example, really leaning into this. I think Magnite just launched something similar, and obviously they must be. Yeah, Viant is, and they're also probably looking at the trade desk and saying, okay, TTD looks relatively vulnerable right now, and there's this generational technology shift. Maybe we can sort of shift the balance of power. What's your take?
People are already experimenting with agentic trading, meaning buyer agents and seller agents talking together in order to actually transact deals. It's happening. And in fact, like you could argue, and I guess my hypothesis, Joe, would be it's inevitable that some media, whether that's 5% or 90%, but some, we don't know, but some media, I'd argue a good portion of it will be traded that way between buyer agents representing marketers and seller agents, probably through agencies, but then seller agents representing publishers. I think it's almost inevitable that happens. Now, in the agency world, I'm not talking specifically about Omnicom. I don't, certain things I can and can't say, but I think generally in the agency world, there's a belief that if we can do this, we can cut out a good portion of ad tech. So you think about you're not paying an SSP fee. And then in theory, that gets passed off to the client, or that could stay in working media, plus all the other tech taxes that come out. Now, I'm not suggesting that's happening now, but there's a belief that it could potentially happen, right? Not to all media, but to some media that you could buy this way. So, I mean, you talk to certain people like Dr. Fu, right? He'll even say like planners and buyers should be doing, say, going directly to the platforms, meaning the walled gardens, as well as the streaming publishers and the places where you have owned and operated inventory. You can go directly to those portals. I mean, they're not really, you can call them DSPs, to those portals where you can make your buys. Why not just do that separately with them? A lot of media, you could argue, could be transacted that way almost right away. Once you figure out how to get the agents talking, where you can't do it is when you get into scaled buys, right? Where you're like, okay, well, how am I going to buy scaled inventory across 5,000 or 10,000 or 50,000 websites, right? And then you get into the problem of identity and frequency caps. That's what DSPs do, right? I mean, like the fact that you're aggregating all this inventory in one place, I mean, that's why DSPs, they prioritize IDs, right? Because they want to be able to say, okay, we're going to cap this person at 10 exposures because we're going to be like advertising across all these different places. And we don't want to do what's right for the client, do what's right for the consumer experience, and not bombard people too much. So you can actually, there's a lot of things that DSPs do that would not be replaced in this new environment. So I think there's still going to be an important role for DSPs, but it's certainly, I think the amount of media and inventory that goes in open exchange, I think it inevitably will be less than it is today. It'll only be for the scaled stuff, and all the stuff that can go direct. I think it probably will go direct agentically at some point. That's my hypothesis.
Rio, every time I see you either at a conference or online, you're wearing like the flyest hat. It's like straw with a brim and like a black band around it. What kind of hat is that? Because I want to buy it for Jeff.
So I'm trying to cover my bald head, Eric. I'm bald and proud. So good.
Do you know the hat?
I'm going to go grab it. Let me go grab it and I'll tell you the brand. Hold on.
I've been meaning to ask this guy about the hat.
We can't all have your hair, Eric. Some of us just have bald Italian grandpas and we just came out this way.
Okay, so this
I don't know what to tell you.
This is ableism.
This is the hat you mean, right? And by the way, I get so many compliments on this hat, including Lupus Scallis accused me of stealing his hat, which I did. I did not steal it from Lou. He's got good hat game. So the brand is Begali, and this is made in Ecuador. It's a Panama hat made in Ecuador. I went to this there's like a men's clothing store. It's funny. I wasn't even looking for it. I was looking for a jacket, and I was like, that's a sweet hat. And so I ended up buying this. And I'm a huge fan. Because I have a couple other hats, but I wear this all the time. I love it.
This is your trademark hat. I love this hat. I think Joe would look good in the hat.
I think you could do it,
on
Joe.
your obelisk and import it from Latin America. We're proponents of global capitalism here.
All right. That's it. I had to ask that question. There's the pod. Rio, thank you very much. You're awesome, bro.
Well, so this is fun. So if you get any, I'm curious to hear what kind of like hate mail we get because of the hypothesis we just talked about agentic trading and stuff. Because it's interesting. I published a couple white papers on it. Some clients did reach out to say, oh, we're very interested in this. And I had some people reach out with spicy opinions. So I'm curious to hear, because it's not happening, but I do think it is in some way will be an inevitability, which we'll see over time. So I'll be curious to see what kind of reception this gets when it's dropped in a couple weeks, Joe.
Well, we're still recording, so people, add us in the comments, at Rio in the comments. Let them know how much you agree or disagree.
Follow us on YouTube or LinkedIn, and Obelisk is a tower. Take care, everyone.